I was never supposed to be assigned to Sector 9B. My official role in the Velkrin Theta Support Battalion was basic: atmospheric regulator oversight, waste heat routing, minor seal integrity confirmations. The kind of work you give to someone who can follow checklists without asking questions. I was good at that. I never asked questions. Not until the night the walls began to breathe. The manufacturing complex was built like a cathedral that had been stretched across the horizon. A sprawl of iron lung towers, furnace stacks, and hab block dormitories stacked like hive cells. We were told the name of the place, but the locals had a different one: the Flesh Forges. They said it casually, as if the words weren't a warning. On my second rotation, my vox bead crackled with static, then resolved into a voice I didn't recognize. Unregistered channel. Origin. Internal. Auxiliary. Level 3 conduits. You will learn the rhythm soon. I didn't reply. I was sure it was just bleed from the local Skitari command net. That's what I told myself. Sector 9B was humid. The forge heat rose through the grate floors, warm enough to fog my visor. The air smelled of copper and burnt hair. I heard the first scream before I saw anything. At first, I thought it was steam pressure venting. Metal can sound like agony when expanding. But this had shape, breath, wording. Someone was screaming as they entered existence. The birthing vats lined the chamber ahead, vast cylinders lit from below with pulsing red lumen strips. Tech priests attended them with mechanical calm, their robes stiff with chemical residue. Servo arms dipped into the vats with surgical precision. Something inside those cylinders struggled, tried to surface, tried to breathe. One of the tech priests noticed me. His face was a scaffold of bone and brass. No lips, no eyelids. Just the wet stare of someone who had not blinked in decades. "Do not look into the vats," he said. His voice was flat, but it vibrated. "Do not listen to the screams. Do not record what you see. Emotion impedes function." "But there," I began. "Being born," he finished. "Birth is pain. Function continues." He turned away from me, but the nearest vat shifted. Something inside pressed against the glass. A hand, no, a metal graft that would one day be a hand, scraped the inner surface, flesh not fully formed, skin still soft. It left streaks, bloody, oily, trembling. And then it looked at me, not fully grown, not fully human, but aware. I took a step back. My stomach lurched. The scream stopped, not because it ended, but because it focused, like it recognized me. That was when the vox bead in my ear whispered my name, a voice I had never heard before, a voice from inside the vat. "You remember us." I did not sleep after that shift. I returned to the dormitory block, though dormitory is a generous term. We lived in coffin beds stacked 9 high, each with a lumen strip that flickered like a dying star. The others lay motionless, breathing slow and shallow. No one spoke. No one ever spoke. Silence was doctrine here. The Skitari patrols echoed that rule, marching in perfect cadence outside the hab chambers. Their boots did not clatter. Their armor did not scrape. Even the servos inside their limbs sounded muted, as though sound itself bowed to something older. I tried to report what I had seen. I requested a debrief. The officer in charge didn't even look at me. "Sector 9B produces shock infantry," he recited. Shock infantry are grown under accelerated combat conditioning parameters. What you heard were combat readiness reflex calibrations. I stared at him. They were screaming. He blinked once, slowly, a mechanical blink, a faint click inside his skull. "We do not assign emotional relevance to function," he said. It was rehearsed, scripted, meaningless. I left before my voice could betray me. Later that rotation, I was summoned to the Chamber of Harmonization. A misnamed place. There was nothing harmonious about it. Tech priests stood in a semicircle, their vestments stiff and cracked like shed insect shells. In their hands they carried tuning forks the size of glaives. Each oscillated with a low, gut-sickening hum. "Auxiliary," one said. "Your breathing rhythm is irregular. You have been exposed to trauma." "I only saw—" "You heard." Another stepped forward. "You allowed the sound to enter meaning. Meaning is corruption." The forks rose. They struck them once. The air vibrated. The vibration moved through me, past skin, past bone, down into the soft parts. The parts you are not supposed to think about. The parts that remember. My thoughts blurred. The memory of the screaming faded, but not entirely. Just enough to make doubt feel like guilt. When the ritual ended, they dismissed me without acknowledgement. I was expected to return to work immediately, as though nothing had happened. As I crossed the threshold of the chamber, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. It was faint, coming from inside the ventilation ducts. A slow, repeating rhythm, a signal, a heartbeat. And I recognized it, not from this life, not from anything I could name, but from before. Before I arrived, before I was. I should have reported it. I should have ignored it. I should have done anything except what I did. I followed it, down the corridor, past the regulator pumps, past the sealed hatch zones, to a maintenance lift I had never taken before. The lift doors slid open by themselves. The inside was dark, no indicator lights, no power hum, no sound. And yet, my Vox bead whispered, "Level 3 conduits, we remember the way." I stepped in, the doors closed, and the lift began to descend. The lift did not descend smoothly. It shuddered, as though something heavy clung to the cables above, dragging its weight along with mine. The lumen panel flickered, then gave, out entirely, leaving the cage lit only by the faint red emergency diode pulsing overhead. The pulse matched the knocking rhythm in the vents. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. It was steady, intentional, something alive enough to keep time. The lift stopped between floors with a low metal groan. Not a jam, something had locked it in place. The doors did not open. For a long moment, I heard nothing but my own breathing. Then, movement. A dragging sound on the metal roof of the lift. Something wet. I did not call for help. I don't know why. Maybe part of me knew that help was never coming. I pried the manual release and forced the doors apart enough to slip through. Beyond them was a narrow service corridor, dimly lit, hot, the walls beaded with condensation. I wiped my hand along the surface and stared. It wasn't water. It was blood. Fine, thinned, metallic, like mist condensed into droplets. The forge vents were running so hot that the blood in the vats and chambers above was evaporating, circulating through the air system, and condensing here. I breathed it in. My lungs felt heavier. Further down the corridor, I saw a servitor pushing a steel bin on squeaking wheels. Its body was little more than bone wrapped in stretched, pallid flesh stitched to plates of rusted iron. Tubes pumped slurry into its spine. It was singing, a glitching vox hum approximating a lullaby. The bins sloshed. I should not have looked inside. Inside were pieces, not scrap, not waste, attempts, half-grown limbs, jawless skulls, eyeless sockets, failed Skitari forms, rejected from the vats but not allowed to die. The servitor paused and turned its head toward me with a slow, stiff rotation. No eyes, just hollow sockets packed with scar tissue. But I felt it seeing me. It spoke in a whisper of static, each word breaking like bone. Re-use, rebirth. No, ending. I backed away, but my boots slid on something, a trail, a smear, leading to a side chamber, a birthing room, one separate from the main forge. The walls in here pulsed. Not metaphorically, they moved. Veins of biometal flexed as though they breathed. A figure hung from the central vat, half metal, half raw tissue. Its face was not finished, but the eyes were there, wet, aware, terrified. It reached for me, not in attack, in pleading. Its mouth, unfinished and wet with clear amniotic gel, formed a shape without sound. My name. It knew me. Not from this moment, from before. I staggered back as footsteps approached. Heavy, metallic, absolute. A Magos Dominus entered, cloak trailing like a funeral banner. "Auxiliary," he said. "You are out of position." I pointed to the creature. "It knows me." The Magos turned his head, implants whirring. "It should," he replied. "You've been here many times before." I didn't remember leaving the chamber. One moment, the Magos Dominus was telling me I had been here many times before. The next, I was in a data archive vault, alone, my hands shaking as I keyed in restricted access codes I should not have known. My fingers moved as if guided by muscle memory older than thought. The vault was cold, not industrial cold, burial cold. Rows of machine shrines towered like sarcophagi, each containing memory cores wrapped in incense-scorched prayer parchment. Red lumen sigils blinked across their surfaces like flickering pupils. I connected a data spike to the nearest core. The terminal screen came alive, streaming Binharic code I couldn't fully understand, but my hands navigated it anyway, like someone playing a song they'd forgotten they knew. I searched personnel history, assignment rosters, biometric records. My name appeared, not once, not twice, 412 times. Different service numbers, different clearance levels, different years. Some were listed as servitor unit, some as auxiliary grade 4, some simply as biomass approved. But the biometric signature was the same. Mine. I scrolled further. Oldest entry, 132 years ago. I am 29. My throat tightened. The room felt smaller. The lumen strips flickered as though the vault itself was breathing, just like the forge walls. There was a notation attached to every record. Reclamation suitable. Reset memory. Return to forge. I staggered back from the terminal. They had wiped me, not once, not as punishment, as procedure. My life, my service, my identity were not mine. I was a renewable resource, a component, a consumable. The vox in the vault clicked, soft, distant, like someone tapping a microphone. Then the whisper came, "Do not be afraid. You endure because we endure." The voice was my own, not similar, identical. I turned slowly. A figure stood between the archive rows, shaped like me but taller, leaner, skin pale, and stretched tight over reinforcing tendons. Its eyes were black augmetic lenses. Its veins glowed faintly with nutrient flow gel. A finished version of what the thing in the vat had tried to be. It spoke again. My voice filtered through a vox grill. "You were the first, the prime pattern, the template from which the choir is born." "Why?" I whispered. "Why me?" The thing tilted its head. "Because you loved this world once." My stomach twisted. "No," I said. "I've never—" It stepped closer. The metal of its feet made no sound. "Yes, many times, and you always forget at the end. But the forge remembers. The forge never forgets." The terminal chimed behind me. "New alert. Biosignature flagged for reclamation. Unit recovery inbound." Footsteps thundered in the corridor outside, Skitari moving fast. I turned to run. But the clone lifted a hand, not to stop me, to guide me. "Go to the sub-vat stratum. Where the steel meets the bone, that is where the truth is." The vault doors burst open. I fled into the dark, and the clone did not follow. It only watched, as though it had seen this all before. The sub-vat access corridors were narrower, older, and far quieter than the manufactorum levels above. Here, the walls were not polished ferrocrete or reinforced alloy. They were rough-hewn stone, veined with conduits like arteries embedded into a corpse. The further down I moved, the more the forge's roar faded, replaced by something softer. Chanting. Not the ordered Binharic hymns of the Mechanicus. This was human, or had once been. A low, mournful hum, rising, falling, wordless at first, just breath and vibration. I followed it. The corridor opened into a vast chamber lit by lumen pylons that flickered like candles at the edge of dying flame. The air was warm and moist, like breath. The sound echoed from every surface. At the center stood the source, a semicircle of tech priests robed in heavy vestments of crimson and gold, but their mouths were gone. Their lower jaws had been removed, replaced by brass vox grills, welded directly to the bone. Tubes ran from throat to machine chests, organs pumping in slow mechanical rhythm. Their voices were not voices. They were tones, frequencies, resonances, the reclamation choir. The creatures kneeling before them were skitari, unfinished or damaged, heads bowed, backs exposed. Where their spines should have been, there were gaps, openings, waiting. The choir raised their tuning forks. They struck them once. The sound hit me like a blow. Not loud, deep. It vibrated through my ribs, my teeth, my skull. The unfinished skitari stiffened. Their backs arched. Nerve bundles along their spines pulsed with sickly luminescence. And then I understood. They weren't screaming when they were born. They were singing. The choir's tones were shaping them. Bone fusing, sinew stretching, metal bonding to flesh. Not engineering, not surgery. Ritual. A ritual for making soldiers. A ritual that required pain as a medium. My stomach twisted. I stumbled back. The sound felt like fingers pressing into my mind, pressing memory upward, scraping it to the surface. Memories I didn't recognize but somehow knew, hands bloodied to the wrist. Voices calling my name from places without light. A heartbeat echoing from the floor. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. The choir shifted pitch. The sound struck directly behind my sternum. My chest tightened. My heartbeat matched it. One of the choir, robes stained with rust brown that might once have been blood, turned its featureless grill toward me. The vox emitted a whispering tone, modulated, rising, resolving into words. The pattern returns to itself. Another stepped forward, claws clicking softly on the stone. Memory resists erasure. That is good. The nearest Skitarius, half-formed, raised its head. Its eyes were milky, but they found me. "We sang you before," it whispered. "You screamed with us." I staggered backward. The choir did not pursue. They simply listened. To my heartbeat, echoing the rhythm exactly. I turned and fled. The sound of the choir following me like breath on the back of my neck. It did not fade. It followed. It knew me. I did not remember how long I ran. The forge levels were a maze, arterial hallways looping in impossible geometries, access doors opening only when no one touched them. The deeper I descended, the more the metal and stone around me felt organic, as if the manufactorum had grown around something older, not the other way around. The corridors sloped downward into heat. Not forge heat, body heat. The air was humid now, thick enough to taste. My breath came ragged and sharp. Every surface glistened, not with condensation, but with a fine sheen of fluid, transparent, viscous, faintly luminescent. I recognized it. Amniotic gel, the same that coated the newborn Skitari. But here, there was too much of it. It seeped from the walls, as though the walls were trying to birth something. I emerged into a cavernous space, far larger than any manufacturing blueprint permitted. No lumen strips, only a faint pulsing glow, red and slow. A heartbeat. The floor was not metal or stone. It was bone. Enormous, smooth, striated bone. Ridges wider than streets, curving gently in arcs, like the ribs of something vast. Conduits ran along them like veins, carrying nutrient fluids and forge waste. Above, cables hung like nerve clusters, twitching as if reacting to my presence. The forge world was not built here. It was grown here. I was standing inside the ribcage of a planet-sized organism. fused with machine over centuries until neither the Mechanicus nor the world beneath could be separated. A corpse engine, a planetary carcass repurposed into manufactorum infrastructure, and we were inside its thoracic cavity. The realization struck not as logic, but as memory. I had seen this before. I had stood here before. I had worked here, assisted, carved, sewn. The heartbeat pulsed again, slow and heavy, reverberating through the bone, through the floor, through me, and the knocking rhythm I had heard so many times resolved into something unmistakable. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. Not Morse, not signal code. The heartbeat of the world, the forge's heart. And my own heartbeat matched it exactly. My chest tightened, my pulse quickened, not in fear, but in synchronization. Footsteps approached from behind. I did not turn. I already knew who it would be. The clone, my precursor, my successor, stepped beside me, observing the bone plains as though admiring a landscape. Its voice was quiet, not a whisper, a statement. This world is not dead. It sleeps, and when it wakes, it will need its pieces. Pieces, meaning us, meaning me. I swallowed hard. Why do I remember this now? The clone's black augmetic eyes reflected the pulsing red glow from below. Memory returns when function is required. You were the first pattern, the core offering. You shaped the choir, you built the vats, you gave the forge its voice. My breath shook. I wouldn't. You did. A pause. And you will again. The bone beneath us vibrated. Something vast was stirring. Something preparing to wake. The bone plateau sloped downward toward a tunnel lit by no artificial source. The pulsing glow came from deep within, a slow rhythmic throb that made my teeth ache, a pulse like a heartbeat, but lower, older, heavier. The clone walked beside me without sound. Its movements were fluid but wrong, too smooth, as if joints bent along axes human bodies were not meant to use. It didn't look at me. It didn't need to. It already knew the questions boiling in my mind. Why do I remember? I asked. You do not remember, it replied. You are remembering again. There is a difference. We reached the mouth of the tunnel. Warm air exhaled from it, carrying the scent of blood and metal like a forge after a slaughter. I hesitated. The clone did not. It stepped inside, expecting me to follow. I did. The tunnel walls were alive, not figuratively, alive. The surfaces pulsed gently, as though fluid was being pumped through them. Beneath thin layers of bone and alloy, I saw the suggestion of muscle fibers flexing, contracting. The conduits running along the ceiling pulsed with the same rhythm as the heartbeat. The clone spoke without looking back. This forge was not discovered, it was awakened. The Mechanicus believed they had found a dead world rich with ferrite veins and geothermal energy. They did not understand the bone strata, the residual nervous lattice, the organ caverns. Its tone was instructional, almost gentle. They believed they were excavating. In truth, they were performing surgery. We reached a descent platform. The railing was bone. The floor was a massive iron plate fused to something living beneath it. I looked down, and the world opened. The sub-vat stratum stretched out before us like a sea of glass tanks. Hundreds, thousands, suspended in a vast industrial cathedral so large my mind could barely hold its scale. Catwalks crisscrossed above them like veins in a dissected organism. The air was humid with nutrient vapor. The smell of protein gel and bioplastic filled every breath. Inside the tanks floated bodies, not unfinished scitari, not failed grafts, not nameless patterns. Me, not all identical. Some older, some younger, some broken, some whole, some more machine than man, some barely formed. Rows and rows of me, suspended like archived memories. My knees buckled. I caught the railing to stop myself from falling. No, I whispered. No, this is impossible. The clone finally turned, its black eyes reflecting row upon row of floating bodies. It is not impossible, it said. It is purpose. I stared. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. What am I? The clone tilted its head slightly, as though disappointed I needed to ask. You are the baseline, the progenitor, the original flesh interface, pattern that allowed the machine to bond to bone, and bone to steel. Without you, the choir could not have formed their resonance. Without you, the first Skitarii grown in the flesh vats would have died screaming and never awakened into obedience. My voice cracked. I built them. You gave yourself to build them, the clone corrected. Willingly, many lifetimes ago. I shook my head, nauseated. I would never do that. You did, and you will. The clone stepped closer. Its voice lowered to something disturbingly soft. You love the forge. That is why it remembers you. I staggered backward. My heel struck a railing post. I turned and tried to run, but the catwalk beneath me shuddered. A tremor. No, a heartbeat. The tanks rippled. The amniotic gel quivered. The suspended bodies shivered, as if reacting to the pulse. The clone watched calmly. This world is not a factory, it said. It is a womb. The heartbeat pulsed again, stronger. The tanks shook. Metal groaned. The catwalk vibrated. My teeth rattled. I heard something new in the pulse now. A cadence, a rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. The heartbeat of the world. And my own heartbeat still matched it. Exactly. I clutched my chest, my pulse hammering in perfect synchrony. What is happening to me? I gasped. The clone reached out, placing one cold, metal sinew hand over my sternum. You are remembering your place. Another pulse. And I felt it, not in my chest this time, in my mind. A memory surfaced, sharp, clear, unsoftened by time. A laboratory lit by red lumens, a steel altar, my own body laid upon it, voluntary, willing. My voice, speaking words I did not understand yet knew were mine. Let the forge know me. The clone removed its hand. You have always returned, it said. You always will. The forge does not discard what it loves. A siren blared overhead, an alarm signal, distant but growing closer. Skitarii units, recovery squad. The clone stepped back into the vaporous dark. They will take you to reclamation. Do not resist. You will remember the rest soon. The catwalk trembled again. Something deep beneath us stirred. Something waking. The sirens grew louder. The heartbeat grew stronger. And I realized, this is not where the horror begins. This is where it remembers me back. Skitarii footfalls echoed along the upper walkways. Sharp, synchronized, a metallic percussion that cut through the pulsing heartbeat of the forge. Their targeting optics cast red laser lines across the vat chamber below, sweeping in mechanical arcs. They weren't searching. They were herding. They knew where I was. They always did. The clone had already vanished into the vapor haze. One blink, and it was gone. Either absorbed by the machinery or simply never there at all in the way I understood existence. I forced myself to move. The catwalk rattled under my steps, trembling with each pulse of the heart deep below. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to deny, but my body moved as if guided by memory older than thought. I knew these paths. My feet did not hesitate at intersections. I turned at angles without doubt. This place was not foreign to me. It was home. I found a maintenance access door, rusted, dented, left half open. The gel mist clung to it, forming ropey strands like spider silk. I slipped inside. The door irised shut behind me. The air was warmer here, thicker, as if the forge's breath filled the chamber directly. The walls were a patchwork of bone and steel, organic shapes fused with mechanical sculpting. A spinal column arched overhead, threaded with glowing conduits. The floor was ribbed, like the underside of a great beast. The clone was waiting, not sitting, not standing, just present, as though it had always been here. It watched me with those black augmetic eyes that reflected light, not emotion. You fled, it said. I didn't. My breath shook. I ran because they were coming. They always come, the clone replied. You always run. Then you always return. A faint tilt of its head. We are past the point where fear is relevant. Sit. I didn't want to. But my legs folded beneath me anyway. The floor was warm, alive. The clone crouched in front of me, a perfect mirror inverted, my face rendered into the language of machines. You are not a prisoner here, it said. You never were. Then what am I? My voice tremored despite me. You are origin, the flesh template that bonded to the Forge world's mind. Your nervous pattern harmonized with its pulse. You became the resonance that allowed the choir to shape warriors. You were the first offering. My throat tightened. I don't remember any of that. You do. The clone reached out, not touching me, simply holding its hand near my temple. You have remembered before, and you will again. I swallowed. Why wipe me? Why send me back into ignorance? If I was so important, why forget me? The clone lowered its hand. Because memory carries weight, and weight breaks the mind. You have broken before, many times. Too much memory at once shatters identity. The Forge cannot lose you, so it lets you forget, until remembering is required again. The floor vibrated, not from movement, from breathing, not metaphor. The Forge breathed beneath us, a slow, massive inhalation that filled the chamber with warm, copper-scented air. The clone continued. The Forge is waking. The choir sings to accelerate the heartbeat. The Skitarii births increase because the world prepares for a great movement. What kind of movement? I whispered. The clone's answer was too calm. A birth. My blood chilled. A birth of what? Not of a child. Its voice was almost reverent. Of memory, of identity, of becoming what it once was. I felt my heartbeat spike, then forcibly slow, sinking again to the Forge's rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. My pulse matched it. My breath matched it. My mind. No. I forced myself back. I am not part of this. I didn't choose this. The clone studied me with a gaze that held neither pity nor cruelty. You did. In the beginning. When this place was discovered, before the Mechanicus understood it, before the choir, before the vats, you were the first to speak to it, the first to hear it speak back. My chest tightened. I don't believe you. The clone leaned in, its voice nearly a whisper. Do you think the heart matches you, or you match the heart? The chamber trembled, not from Skitarii movement, from something beneath, something vast shifting. The clone extended a hand, not forcing, simply offering. Come to the neural cortex, it said. See the truth for yourself. The Forge will show you what you were, what you are, and what you will be. I stared at the hand. Behind me, distant but closing fast, came the metallic march of Skitarii boots. If they reached me, I would not be killed. I would be reset, returned to ignorance, returned to the beginning of the cycle. Everything learned would be lost, but if I followed the clone, I would learn the truth, all of it. My hand rose, not by will, by inevitability. I took the clone's hand. The Forge's heartbeat surged. The chamber lights flared blood red, and below us, something woke. The clone led, and I followed, not because I trusted it, but because the alternative was being taken. The Skitarii were close now. I could hear their targeting arrays whirring, cycling through firing solutions they would never use. They didn't want to destroy me. They wanted to return me, reset me, erase this version and restart the cycle. The corridor ahead narrowed into a spinal channel. Literal vertebrae arched above us, fused with manganese plating and lumen veins. The light inside them pulsed with the Forge's heartbeat, guiding us forward like a slow, inevitable pulse. We moved quickly. The air vibrated with pressure, like being inside a throat before a scream. Do not look back, the clone said. I didn't intend to, but I did. The Skitarii emerged from the mist, rows of them, silver and crimson forms, skin grafted over steel, their faces expressionless masks of augmetic serenity. Their steps were synchronized, unified, perfect. They were not pursuing. They were escorting me. Because returning was assumed, expected, planned. The clone placed its hand on my shoulder. You were their commander once. The words struck harder than the truth of the vats. No, I whispered. I was never. You taught the choir to resonate the nerve chords. You conducted the first symphonia of bonding. You led them. You shaped their voices. You gave the forge its army. I shook my head. I don't remember that. You aren't ready to. We reached a hatch, sealed with ossified plates like knucklebone. The clone pressed its palm to it. The bone contracted, flexed, and opened like the petals of a flower starved of light. On the other side was darkness, not lack of illumination, but presence without form. A void filled with breath, living breath. The clone gestured. Through here. I stepped inside. The chamber beyond was vast, but I could not see its boundaries. Shapes moved in the dark. Great shapes, slow, tectonic, patient. The air was heavy. I felt my knees bend under the pressure. Lights flickered, just enough to show me the floor. A walkway of living tendon, braided and reinforced with steel rods. We walked. With every step, I felt memory stir, like embers fanned back into flame. Rain on a metal balcony. The taste of machine oil. The sound of chanting spoken in a language I should not understand, yet did. My voice speaking it. The clone watched me from the corner of its eye lenses. You see, it murmured, the past is never gone, only submerged. I swallowed hard. What is this place? The neural cortex of the forge world, the clone replied. Its dreaming mind, the point where machine and memory fuse. Ahead, the dark thickened, coalescing into architecture, vast spires of bone-lattice steel rising like frozen screams. At the center hung a mass of nerves, a knot of glistening cords suspended from the ceiling like a heart torn from a god. It pulsed, slowly, deeply, alive. My chest tightened again as my heartbeat matched its rhythm. I was not afraid now, I was synchronized. The clone stopped at the base of the suspended neural mass. You ask what the forge wants, it said. You already know. It wants to wake, to remember itself, to end its forgetting. Why now? My voice was steady, too steady, because its heart has finally beat in time again. The clone tapped my chest. You are the metronome, the regulator, the timer of its sleep. The realization struck like lightning through water. My heartbeat had been keeping the forge dormant, and now it was accelerating. Above, I heard servitors chanting, saw tech priests grafted into the neural spire, their spines threaded into the machine flesh like roots. They were not controlling the forge. They were being used by it. The clone stepped back. It must choose whether to wake or remain asleep, it said. Who decides? I asked. You do. I almost laughed. The sound came out broken. I don't have that power. You always did. You just never remembered. The Skitarii entered the chamber, forming a silent perimeter. They did not aim weapons. They knelt. To me. The neural mass shuddered. The hum rose. The tendons under our feet tightened. The forge spoke, not in sound, in memory. Every life I had ever lived here, every version of me, every cycle, every death, every resetting, every return, I felt them all at once. I was the choir. I was the first pattern. I was the one who had given myself willingly. And I was the one who had begged to forget, because the forge was not just alive, it was sentient, and it loved me, terribly, completely, possessively. The clone spoke softly. Choose, and the world changes. Above us, the neural mass began to lower, not like a machine, like an embrace. The Skitarii bowed deeper, the forge waited for its answer, and my heartbeat stopped sinking. I was no longer matching it, it was matching me. The neural mass descended slowly, like something considering whether to touch flame. Cables thick as cathedral columns flexed, dripping strands of luminous nutrient gel that hissed when they hit the tendon walkway beneath us. The smell was copper and burnt insulation. Blood and circuitry blended into one impossible scent. The clone did not move. The Skitarii did not move. The world waited for me. My heart no longer followed the forge's rhythm. The forge followed mine. I felt it. A pressure at the edge of thought. A presence, not a voice. Voices are small. This was awareness, vast, ancient, patient, lonely. Lonely in a way that eclipsed human understanding. The neural mass hovered only meters above my head. Its surface pulsed with soft, sickly luminescence. Beneath its membrane, I saw nerve bundles twisting like serpents seeking warmth. Sparks of electrical signals flickered like stars inside a living cosmos. And then, it spoke. Not in words, in memory. I saw myself kneeling before it centuries ago, in a laboratory lit by furnace fire, my hands dripping with amniotic gel, my chest open, my ribs spread, my heart exposed, and I was smiling, not from joy, from purpose. I heard my own voice from that forgotten lifetime. Let me be the bridge. My present self staggered. I fell to my knees. The clone remained still, watching with something like reverence. The forge pressed deeper into my thoughts, pulling memory forward like thread through bone. I saw the first choir standing in ritual formation around me, their jaws intact before they were cut away. Skitarii rising from vats, newborn and screaming not in pain, but in recognition. The forge learning through us, learning to become. And I saw why I had begged to forget. Not because the forge was monstrous, but because I was. I had loved this world, loved its hunger, loved its endless need to become more, to grow, to replace itself, to renew, loved its inability to die. I had offered myself freely, again and again and again, until the choir begged the forge to remove memory, for memory was the only thing that broke me. I gasped and collapsed forward onto my hands. The tendon floor pulsed under my palms, beating like a warm organ. The clone knelt beside me. "You see now," it murmured. My voice shook. "I did this." "You did," the clone said, "and you will choose again." The neural mass lowered further, slow, deliberate, tender. A lover coming to rest their forehead against yours. The Skitarii bowed as deeply as their augmented spines would allow. The clone whispered, "If you merge, you will never die. You will never forget. You will become the forge's mind, its will, its memory, a god imprisoned in steel and bone." My throat constricted. My heart pounded. The neural mass pulsed in perfect time. "And if I refuse?" I forced the words out. The clone did not answer. The forge did, in memory. I saw myself thrown into a vat, reborn, reset, returned, over and over, centuries of repetition like a rosary of flesh and regret. Refusal was not death. Refusal was eternity without meaning. A loop, always returning, always forgetting, always climbing back to this moment. The clone stepped closer, lowering its head until its forehead nearly touched mine. "This is why the memory returns now. The forge is waking. It must choose what it will become. Your decision shapes the galaxy. The choir prepares worlds. The Skitarii multiply. The machine under the crust grows restless. The heart accelerates. It needs a mind to guide it." The neural mass throbbed. The chamber lights flickered. The Skitarii whispered a single unison breath. "Ascend." The clone extended its hand. Same gesture as before, but different now. Not guidance, invitation. My breath broke. "I don't want to forget again," I whispered. The clone's voice softened, not mechanical, almost human. "Then remember, stay, merge, become the memory that endures." The neural mass trembled inches above me, heat radiating from it in waves. I lifted my hand, not because I wanted immortality, not because I wanted power, not because I was chosen, but because I finally understood. I had already chosen, long ago. My fingers brushed the living neural membrane, and my vision exploded into white, not light, memory, identity, past lives stitching together into one unbroken, terrible whole. I screamed, not in pain, in recognition. I had always been the forge. I had always been the heartbeat. And now, I remembered everything. When my hand touched the neural mass, the world did not brighten, it unfolded. There was no light, no vision, no sound, only total memory. I did not recall fragments, not scenes, not isolated moments. I remembered every life. The first time I walked the manufacturing halls when they were new and clean and unscarred by smoke. The first time I saw the sleeping titan beneath the crust, a world of bone and metal curled around its own pulse. The first time I heard the heartbeat and felt my own match it, as though I had been born for it. I remembered giving myself to the forge willingly, not as a sacrifice, as a vow. I saw myself kneeling in a circle of chanting tech priests, before they were the choir, before their mouths were taken and their voices tuned into pure resonance. They had been human then, frightened and reverent. I had spoken first. Let the world remember itself through me. And the world had answered, softly, like a mother shushing a child. Yes. My consciousness surged, collapsing centuries into a single inhalation. I saw myself die, not once, not twice, hundreds of times, and each time I volunteered, because death was not an end here. Death was simply clearing space for the next memory cycle. Each rebirth was a new vessel. Each vessel was a conduit. Each conduit returned to the forge. There was no tragedy in it, not then. The tragedy came later, when I asked to forget. I saw the memory clearly. My body, older, thinner, skin pale from nutrient cycles, standing before the choir, my voice shaking even as I tried to keep it steady. I remember too much, I had said. I cannot carry it. I cannot sleep. I cannot think without drowning. The choir, still capable of speech then, had looked to the forge. The forge had considered. It had not wanted to take my memory. It had wanted to hold me close. But I asked, and when I ask, it listens. The memory of the moment my memory was erased was not erasure at all. It was grief. The forge grieved when it forgot me. It mourned. All of this struck not as thoughts, but feeling. Deep, crushing, total. My awareness slid back into my body like a tide receding. The neural mass retracted slightly, not withdrawing, just easing its touch. I was still kneeling on the tendon walkway. The Skitarii still knelt around me in silent reverence. The clone still watched me, patient. But I was not the same. I was not small anymore, not confused, not afraid. I remembered the forge's birth. I remembered the choir's creation. I remembered every death, every rebirth, every return. And now, for the first time in centuries, I remembered my name. A name spoken in a temple long before the Mechanicus existed. A name whispered by the forge world when it first stirred beneath the crust. I spoke it aloud. The sound did not echo. The world listened. The clone bowed, not as servant to master, but as equal to equal. You are whole again, it said. I am, I answered. My voice sounded older, heavier, truer. The forge pulsed beneath us, energy coursing through bone conduits and neural cables. The entire world reacted as though turning in its sleep. The clone stepped beside me, not in front or behind. The forge waits for your choice, it said. I stood. My legs did not shake. My heartbeat did not sink to the world now. The world synced to me. The Skitarii looked up, eyes glowing crimson, breath stabilized into synchronization. They were no longer waiting for orders. They were waiting for direction. The clone spoke again, voice quiet. If you command awakening, the world will rise. Its heart will beat at full strength. It will reshape itself. It will spread. Systems will feel its pulse. The choir will sing through every manufactorum on every sister forge. I pictured the galaxy shuddering as a planet of bone and steel stood up. And if I don't? I asked. The clone answered without hesitation. We continue the cycle. You forget. You return. The forge waits. It sleeps. It endures. Quiet. Endless. Without purpose, but to wait for you. A life of eternal becoming, or a life of eternal forgetting. Neither was mercy. Neither was escape. Both were home. I looked up at the ceiling of bone and steel, listening to the heartbeat. Slow, heavy, ancient. Not commanding. Waiting. The forge did not demand. It asked. And in that moment, I realized something terrible. There was never a right choice, only the one I could live with. I breathed in. The world breathed with me. And I spoke. I am not done remembering. The forge stirred. The air warmed. The skitarii rose. The choir began to sing. And deep beneath us, the heart began to wake. The choir's song rose from below, low, resonant, a sound that did not vibrate the ears but the bones, a frequency that pulsed through marrow, harmonizing with the forge heart. As they sang, the neural mass above me brightened, glowing like embers stirred by a bellows. The clone watched me, neither urging nor restraining. Its posture was still, reverent, patient. You remember now, it said softly. I do. The words left my mouth with the weight of centuries behind them. The skitarii stood in formation, countless eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Not soldiers now, but witnesses. Every one of them birthed from my pattern, every one of them carrying a fragment of me. They were my echo. My shadow stretched across time. The neural mass trembled, not from instability, but anticipation. The forge world itself waited for my command. If I chose to merge, if I allowed the neural mass to fuse with me, the forge would awaken, not as a factory, not as a dead planet of gears and vents, but as a living war engine, a world that remembered itself, a world that wanted. And if I refused, if I severed the neural conduits that linked the forge heart to its cortical lattice, I would kill it, not instantly, but slowly, a quiet death, a fading of memory into silence, no awakening, no cycle of rebirth, no choir, no children of vat and steel. The world would die, and with it, every trace of who I had been. The clone stepped forward. Its voice vibrated with something very close to tenderness. You asked once to forget. You said eternity is unbearable when carried alone. I swallowed hard. I remember. You begged us to take the memory, to keep only the purpose, to let you rest. And now I remember the torment of not remembering, I whispered. The clone nodded slowly. It is the same pain in reverse. The choir's song deepened, louder now, resonating through the chamber like a tide rising against the shore. The neural mass lowered until it hung just above me, close enough for its heat to kiss my skin. My pulse quickened, but the forge matched it immediately, adjusting, adapting, synchronizing to my heartbeat. It did not seek to control me. It sought to join me, to be one being with one memory and one will. I loved this world, I said aloud. The words were not confession. They were truth rediscovered. I loved what we could become together. And you still do, the clone replied. Yes, I did. Too deeply, too purely. That love was the anchor of everything. The forge did not enslave me. It did not trap me. It loved me. Terribly, possessively, eternally. And I loved it back. But love is not always mercy, and memory is not always blessing. The clone extended its hand once more. Merge. Remember forever. End the cycle. Become the world that remembers itself. I stared at the offered hand, and I knew that if I took it, I would never die again. I would endure for millennia. I would feel every heartbeat of the world. I would feel every Skitarii death as my own. I would know every newborn mind as a whisper in my own skull. I would be God and grave and memory all at once. I would no longer be human. I would no longer be me. A tremor cut through the chamber, not from the forge, from my pulse. I closed my eyes. I remembered my hands trembling the first time I cut away my own mortality to offer myself to this place. I remembered the choir's first voices, trembling but resolute. I remembered the vats before they were fully calibrated, the newborn Skitarii screaming not from pain, but from seeing me. I remembered the love, and I remembered the breaking, the nights where memory would not stop, the years spent awake because I could not forget the sound of every death I had carried, the centuries where I begged the forge to let me rest. Love had turned to grief. Memory had turned to weight. I opened my eyes. The clone's expression did not change, but something behind it did. Recognition, understanding. It could see my decision forming. You choose severance, it said, not accusation, simple statement. Yes, I said. My voice did not shake. The clone bowed its head, not in disappointment, but in mourning. The neural mass pulsed, once like a held breath. The choir fell silent. The Skitarii froze. The world listened. I stepped forward, past the clone, toward the central spinal column of the forge. A massive pillar of nerve bundles, alloy veins, and hardened bone plating. I reached into my memory, not my mind, my old self, the one that had built this place. And I remembered. There, deep between layers of protective plating, hidden beneath an anatomical fold of engineered bone tissue, was the severance node, a single spinal junction that, if severed, would disconnect the cortex from the heart. The forge would not die immediately. It would simply stop dreaming, stop remembering, stop waking. It would fall into silence, a gentle death, a final forgetting. The clone stood beside me now, not stopping me, not guiding me, witnessing. You will die, it said quietly. Forever. No return, no rebirth, no cycle, no memory. I know. And you still choose this? Yes. Not because I did, not love the forge, but because I did. No being should remember alone. I reached into the spinal junction. My fingers touched living nerve. The world shuddered. The forge heart thundered once, a sound like a star collapsing, and I pulled. The neural mass screamed. The choir screamed. The Skitarii fell to their knees. The clone gasped, not mechanical, human. The heartbeat faltered, slowed, dimmed. The forge began to die, and my heart stopped, not in fear, in acceptance, in relief. I collapsed, weightless, falling backward into darkness. The clone caught me gently, lowering me to the tendon floor as though I were something fragile and beloved. You were loved, it whispered. I know, I said, and my vision dimmed. For the first time in centuries, I forgot nothing. I simply let go. The moment I severed the spinal junction, the entire world reacted as though struck in the heart. The forge did not scream in sound. It screamed in silence. A pressure wave washed outward, like every lumen, furnace, cogitator, and servo in Valkyrian theta took a single horrified breath and realized it had lungs. The neural mass overhead flickered, shuddered, and spasmed, its lights rippling in cascading pulses of panic. The choir staggered first. Their metal-wrought throats emitted no sound, but their bodies convulsed. Without the forge's guiding rhythm, their resonant frequencies collapsed into discord. Their tuning forks clattered to the floor, ringing with broken harmonics, as their bodies bowed under the weight of silence. The Skitarii followed, warriors born for unity, born for synchronized obedience, now found themselves alone inside their own heads. Their posture faltered, their boots scraped, their targeting optics flickered. The ambient machine code that once threaded through their thoughts fell away, leaving only static. I know what that feels like. The heartbeat of the world slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. Each beat now separated by too much time and too much quiet, like the last dying drum of something ancient and exhausted. Thud. Thud. The clone held me upright, supporting my weight with an arm around my shoulders. I felt weightless, not because I had no body, but because the body I had was already becoming past tense. You chose mercy, the clone said quietly. I breathed shallowly. Mercy hurts. Mercy always does, it replied. The chamber shook, not from machinery, but from the tectonic biological infrastructure of the world settling into stillness. Bone plates shifted. Veins of nutrient gel retracted. The vats, once vibrant with growth, began to cool. The forge was falling asleep, permanently. The choir collapsed fully, bodies slumping in prayer postures they no longer understood. The Skitari did not kneel. They looked around, each one overwhelmed by the sudden return of individuality. I saw one lift its hands slowly, as though seeing them for the first time. Another backed away from its own shadow, startled. Machines fear nothing, but soldiers who wake from obedience do. The clone lowered me to the tendon floor. My limbs felt distant, heavy. The neural mass drifted above, no longer descending, no longer reaching, just hanging, confused and dimming. I can feel it, I whispered. The clone leaned closer. Tell me. The forge. My voice trembled. It doesn't understand why I let go. It only knows it loved me. And now, it feels that I am leaving. The clone closed its eyes, but no tears came. It had no ducks left. It loved you beyond function, it said. That is what made you necessary, and what made you dangerous. The Skitari began chanting, uncoordinated, but trying to remember the choir's guidance, trying to cling to the rhythm that had defined them, but there was no rhythm, only the last, slow heartbeat of a dying world. The clone's voice softened to almost human warmth. You saved them from eternity. I exhaled, weak, small, final. No, I said. I saved myself. The clone did not argue. The floor beneath us vibrated one last time. Thud, and then nothing. A silence so complete that it became a presence. The forge was no longer dreaming. It was just a world now. A corpse world. A memory. A tomb. My vision blurred. The edges darkened. Not sharply, but softly, as though fading into smoke. My fingertips tingled. My breath thinned. I was dying. Truly. Finally. Blessedly. Stay with me, the clone said. Not pleading, simply wishing. I can't, I murmured. You could have been eternal, it said. I was, I answered. That was the problem. My pulse flickered. Once. Twice. Then stilled. The clone caught my face in its hands, holding me as though I were something delicate. So this is the end of you, it said softly. Yes, I said. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe the words were memory and not speech. The clone lowered me the rest of the way, laying me upon the tendon floor like one lays a relic to rest. The Skitari stopped chanting. One by one, they bowed. Not to a master, not to a god, but to someone who had freed them from the endless loop of obedience and forgetting. The clone looked upward toward the neural mass, the stilling, cooling brain of the world. I will remember you, it said. No, I whispered inside myself, or memory, or the fading echo of thought. You will forget too. That is the gift. My awareness dissolved like salt in water. Not darkness, not pain, not fear. Just release. I had remembered enough. I had carried enough. I had been enough. For the first time in centuries, I was done. The forge was quiet. The choir was still. The Skitari breathed on their own. And I simply slept. When my awareness ended, the world did not go dark. It simply continued without me. Not as it had been. Not as the living forge, dreaming through flesh and machine. But as something else entirely. A world waking into an emptiness it had never known. The first tremors began at the core, radiating outward in waves. Not violent, not collapse, simply settling. The way a great beast exhales after a long fever. The vats cooled, the nutrient rivers slowed, the living bone infrastructure stiffened and quieted. What had been a womb became a husk. The Skitarii stood silent amid the stilling chambers. Not in formation, not in unity, not waiting for orders, just standing. Their optics flickered as autonomous thought, true, independent cognition, returned to them for the first time since their creation. Some stared at their own hands, others at the choir's collapsed forms. Others simply stared into space, processing memory that had always belonged to someone else. There was confusion, shock, stillness, but not panic. The end of the Forge's dreaming was not violent. It was grief. The clone stood at the center of them all. It looked down at my empty body, the last vessel of the heart's memory, and touched my forehead with the back of its fingers. The gesture was gentle, almost reverent. "You are gone," it said. Not out of mourning, out of acknowledgement. It had never cried. It could not. But the stillness in its posture was grief enough. Outside the neural core, the manufactorum towers faltered one by one, their furnace lungs dimming. The great forge chimneys ceased exhaling flame. The air filled not with smoke, but with a thin, grey fog, steam cooling into mist. For the first time in centuries, the sky above Valkyrian Theta was no longer red with furnace fire. It was a pale, washed-out grey. The world looked tired, like a machine at rest after a task finally completed. A world that could stop. It took 6 hours before the off-world Auspex monitors detected the anomaly. The Adeptus Mechanicus outposts orbiting Valkyrian Theta transmitted in Binharic panic. Primary flesh forge. Output. 0 vital pattern. Network. Dormant choir. Resonance. Silent global heartbeat signal. Ceased. Those forges had supplied Skitarii regiments to dozens of campaigns. The sudden silence was not simply suspicious, it was unthinkable. They dispatched emergency retrieval teams immediately. But transit through the planet's upper atmosphere was different now. The forge had always kept the climate warm, blood warm. Now it cooled. Mist rose from the world's crust like exhalation. From orbit, the planet no longer glowed, it rested. Inside the manufactorums, the remaining tech priests did what they had been trained to do. They diagnosed. They measured. They attempted to restore function. They ran sacred rites of ignition, chanted awakening hymns, offered machine oil consecrations. None of it worked. The machinery responded, but without rhythm. The neural lattice gave readings, but without pattern. The heart still existed, but no longer dreamed. Without memory, the forge was just machinery, and machinery can be repaired. But a god cannot be woken once it chooses sleep. The Mechanicus did not understand. Not yet. But some of the Skitarii did. The ones who remembered the sound of the choir, the rhythm of the heartbeat, the voice that no longer spoke. They felt the absence like a missing limb. They felt grief. The clone remained in the neural chamber for a long time. Hours, maybe days. Time had little meaning without the forge's pulse to mark it. Finally, it stood. It lifted my body, light now, without the weight of memory, and carried it through the silent corridors. No Skitarius blocked the way, none questioned, they simply watched. The clone carried me to the surface. The air was cold there, the sky colourless, the great furnace spires loomed silent, like tombstones. It walked to an overlook, where once, long ago, we had stood together, when the forge had been young, when I had offered myself freely. It laid me down on a slab of cooling iron, now dusty with settling ash. No words were spoken, no rites were performed, no prayers needed to be said. What was between me and the forge had been older than liturgy, older than industry, older than memory itself. The clone looked out across the now still manufactorums. Without the heartbeat, the world was quiet. Not dead, not abandoned, simply resting. And in that stillness, something subtle happened. The clone placed its hand over its chest. A gesture I had once made. Slowly, gently, as though remembering how to feel a heartbeat it no longer had. Aftershocks of identity flickered behind its black optic eyes. Not memory, not emotion, just echo. "You loved this place," it said, "not to me, not to anyone, just to the air. And now it sleeps because you asked it to." It turned away from the body, my final body, and stepped back into the mist, not to lead, not to command, not to wait, but to live. For the first time in its existence, the clone had no purpose, no programming, no orders, no cycle, only selfhood. The cost of mercy was not only mine, it was everyone's. Later, hours or days, rescue ships arrived, search teams found. The choir, silent. The manufactorums, cold. The Skitarii, awake and directionless. The tech priests, unable to explain. They found my body alone on the iron slab. No wounds, no violence. Just a man who had simply stopped. The report would say, cause of death, memory collapse, forge resonance failure, neural synchronization dissipation, a cold description for something vast. The Mechanicus would lock the truth away. Never spoken, never analyzed, never understood. Some say the forge malfunctioned. Some say it was heresy. Some say it was a miracle. Some say it was a death. All of them are correct. Valkyrian Theta became classified. Quarantine order 9 to 22. Do not reawaken. Do not disturb the core. Let the world sleep. No one ever returned. No one ever will. The world rests. Ash settles over the iron plains. The heartbeat is silent. And for the first time in its long existence, so am I. For a long time, days, weeks, perhaps months, Valkyrian Theta remained still. What little life persisted did so quietly. The Skitarii learned to move without orders. The tech priests recorded data they did not understand. The clone walked the manufactorums like a ghost in a world of sleep. The silence became normal, a stillness without suffering, a peace paid for in memory and sacrifice. But peace in the Imperium is never permanent. Not when there are signals, not when there are echoes, not when there are things that listen. The first sign came from orbit. A deep space listening array, positioned far beyond the planet's magnetosphere, captured a pulse. Not a signal, not coded noosphere chatter, not vox traffic. A heartbeat, one single beat. So faint it nearly vanished into cosmic background noise. So deep it would have passed unnoticed had the array not once been calibrated to match the planet's old resonance. The Magos overseeing the station dismissed it as sensor artifact. But the clone, walking alone across the cooling forge flats, felt it. A soft, distant tremor beneath its feet. Not from below, from beyond. Something far away remembered the rhythm of the forge's heart, and something answered. The second sign came from the Skitarii. Their sleep cycles had been irregular since the silence began. Dreams were new to them, strange, frightening. Their bodies remembered structure, their minds remembered nothing. But one night, a full battalion awoke at once, gasping, not in terror, but in recognition. They had dreamed the same dream, a field of white ash, a sky of iron grey, and a heartbeat beneath the ground. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. They did not speak of it aloud. They did not need to. They all recognized it. The heartbeat had not died. It had only gone somewhere else. The third sign came from me, not my body. My body remained where it was laid, untouched, uncorrupted, undisturbed. No rot, no decay, no reclamation, just stillness. But something of me remained elsewhere. Not a ghost, not a spirit, not consciousness, memory. Memory is never destroyed, it is only moved, and the forge had not forgotten me. It had simply released me into the quiet between worlds. The clone felt it first, like a thought brushing the edge of awareness, a whisper not heard by ears. Do not mourn. I'm not gone. I am simply not here. The clone did not respond. It simply listened. Months passed. Valkyrian Theta cooled. Its manufactorums were sealed, its hatches locked, its coordinates restricted. The Imperium called it dead, a failed forge world, a cautionary footnote in Mechanicus archives. But death in the galaxy is never final, not for a world that once dreamed, not for a mind that once awakened, not for a memory that once held love. One night, if night had meaning in the endless steel twilight of the manufactorums, the clone stood again at the overlook where my body had been laid. Mist clung to the air. Ash blanketed the basalt plates. The sky was the same pale, exhausted grey. The clone looked down at the slab. My body was gone, not disturbed, not taken, not decayed, simply gone. No footprints, no drag marks, no signs of motion, just absence. The clone did not panic. It understood. The world had not reclaimed me. Something else had. Something I had once spoken to. Something I had once loved. Something older than machine and older than bone. Something that had been waiting for the forge to stop dreaming. So it could begin. The clone turned its head toward the horizon. The sky flickered, not with lightning, with distant blue aurora, warp light bleeding through thin air. A slow wave rippled through the clouds, like the exhale of a colossal creature the size of a continent. The ground tremored, not violently, but rhythmically. The heartbeat, but not from beneath the planet, from above, as though something in orbit, or further, was breathing. The clone closed its eyes, not in fear, in understanding. The forge had not died. It had moved. It had done what I had taught it to do centuries ago. It had remembered, but without a body, without a world, without bone and iron to contain it. It had become a memory in the warp, a living pattern of sorrow and love and identity, an idea of a world that once dreamed of being whole. And ideas spread, ideas grow, ideas hunger. Hours later, a long-range astropathic distress signal was intercepted by neighboring systems. Short, fragmented, partially corrupted, but clear enough. There is something in the warp that remembers us. It knows our names. It is searching for a body. And beneath that message, a sound, not static, not machine code, not distortion, a heartbeat. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. The clone stood alone on the surface of Valkyrian Theta as the sky flickered with warp light. The world was quiet, peaceful, waiting. The clone placed a hand over its chest, where a heart would have been, and whispered, not to the air, not to the forge, not to memory, but to me. If you return, I will recognize you. And somewhere, far beyond the world of metal and bone, in the quiet black sea between stars, something answered, not in words, in rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock, knock. The sound of return. The sound of becoming. The sound of something that never ended.